Week 3 of the NFL season is here, and we have a couple of really interesting games. So in today's video, I'll be giving you guys my prediction to every game of week number 3. Subscribe and like the video if you do go on to enjoy. Let's hop into it. And we are going to begin with our Thursday night football game between the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. Look, I don't think I have to talk too much about this game here. This game is, for the most part, pretty obvious. The Miami Dolphins are simply put not playing good football. Tua played better last week, but still not at a very high level. The roster in general has a ton of issues on both offense and defense. The secondary's weak. Defensive line has some pieces, but they're not really great at stuffing the run. I don't think the Bills have to play incredible to win this game. I think Josh Allen just has to do enough. Hand the ball off to James Cook, let him go, and let him play at a high level. Get the ball out to your playmakers. I want to see some tight ends get involved here a little bit. And for the most part, I think the Bills will handle their business. Now, Miami is a competitive team. I think they'll play better as the season does go on. And I think they could give the Bills a run for their money for like the first half or first 3 quarters. But I do eventually believe that talent will take over and the Bills will win the game. So I'm going to predict the Bills to win in terms of a final score. I'm going to take the Bills like 30-20 or something like that. Next up, let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, unfortunately, a game that a few weeks ago looked really interesting on paper has sort of turned into a game that won't be that interesting. And that's because, well, you got Jake Browning versus Carson Wentz. Now, there are some subplots here that are pretty interesting that are not actually happening on the field. For the Minnesota Vikings, letting JJ McCarthy sit for a few weeks and just kind of reflect on his first 2 weeks might not be a bad thing. Let's be honest, JJ outside of like 1 quarter was not playing incredible football. So to allow him to sit on the bench and sit and reflect and watch his film and just relax for a little bit might not actually be the worst thing for him. For the Bengals, though, this is a huge opportunity to get ahead of what is inevitably going to happen. This Bengals team without Joe Burrow is going to go through a rough stretch. Their schedule is brutal, including this week and after this week, and this game is going to be very important. Fortunately, they're going up against the Vikings backup quarterback too, so they're kind of catching a little bit of a break here, if you want to call it that, because JJ wasn't playing well either. But they get a chance here to go up against a Vikings team that's a little bit shorthanded without Jordan Addison, without their starting quarterback. So this might be the perfect opportunity for a Cincinnati Bengals team that doesn't have their starting quarterback and has a brutal schedule to get a win here, start the season off 3-0, and have a little bit of some, leeway these next couple weeks while they're waiting for their starting quarterback. The goal for this Bengals team is just to survive until Burrow returns. The goal should be get to about 500 or maybe a little bit above or maybe slightly below 500. If you get to, let's say Burrow returns week 12, you can get to week 12 like 6-6, or I don't know when their bye is, but something along those lines. That gives you an opportunity still to go on a late run when Burrow returns to get into the playoffs. This is a massive game for Cincinnati and the rest of their season, so they really need the win here. As for Minnesota, last week was very disappointing, so they also want to get back on track. And I just think the Minnesota Vikings have a little bit more talent here. I'm ultimately going to go ahead and predict the Minnesota Vikings to win this game. I just don't think Cincinnati has enough talent. I think they can slow down Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I think they'll get after the quarterback, make life hard on Jake Browning. So because I believe in this defense and what they can do defensively to make life absolute hell for opposing quarterbacks, I'm going to pick the Minnesota Vikings. I'm not expecting a very flashy game here. The key is going to be slow down Jamar Chase and Chase Brown and T. Higgins. I think Minnesota does so. I have the Minnesota Vikings winning the game 17-14. Moving over to the Houston Texans versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. An in-divisional matchup. This will not be an easy game for either side here. I do believe the Houston Texans are in kind of a must-win territory. Yes, I know it's only week 3, but to start your season off 0-2 and look as bad as you have offensively, this is a game that is really, really important. Offensively, the Houston Texans have been elite. They have been incredible. But this offense, simply put, has been atrocious. And there's a lot of reasons why. For starters, I don't understand why they're not using their young players more often. Jalen Noel, Jaden Higgins, Woody Marks. They have some young guys that can really give a spark to this offense, but they're not really using them. The other thing, too, is this offensive line still sucks. We are in year 3 of CJ Stroud, and they have actually regressed almost every single year with their offensive line. Instead of making it better, they've gotten worse and worse every single year, and this year, this offensive line might be the worst one that Stroud's had. They can't do nothing right. They also don't have Joe Mixon, so they're relying on Nick Chubb. And while I think Chubb is doing his job for the most part, they lack a little bit of some explosiveness. Again, why not use Woody Marks there? I think they'll make some adjustments, and I think the play calling will get better. One thing you'll notice about this team, they don't really use a lot of motion before plays. So I actually think they're making life harder for CJ Stroud, which is the opposite of what you want to do. I hope it gets better against the Jaguars. Look, this Jaguars team, they're still figuring it out on the offensive end. They have found something here in Travis Etienne, but they have not been able to get Brian Thomas Jr. going, nor really Travis Hunter all that much. The offensive line is playing okay, I suppose, and Trevor Lawrence, I feel like his numbers are worse than what his play actually looks like. If you actually watch the film, I think Trevor's playing okay, not great, but okay. Defensively, they're making some plays, but they're also not. I mean, they did turn the ball over multiple times versus the Bengals making plays, but then you also let Jake Browning go down and score a touchdown late to win the game. So this defense needs to figure it out. But against this Texans offense, I'm not really too worried about this Jaguars defense. A part of me really wants to say the Jaguars will win this game, but the Texans are they're in code red. They have to get this win, and I think this defense will ball out. So I'm going to lean the Houston Texans here, but I got to be honest with you, I'm not feeling terribly confident about it. But I'll predict the Texans to win this one. I think it'll be a bit of a low-scoring affair, but ultimately CJ Stroud and this offense get a little bit going later in the game. I have the final score 24-17. Moving over to another in-divisional matchup here within the same division, the Indianapolis Colts going up against the Tennessee Titans. So through 2 weeks, we've actually seen a couple teams here that aren't very good and are actually 0-2 that have been extremely competitive. One of them is the Tennessee Titans. The Cleveland Browns have been quite competitive, even though they got blown out last week. The numbers actually are a bit more competitive than what the score says. And the New Orleans Saints. Those are 3 teams that are all really bad towards the bottom of my power rankings, but they're keeping games competitive. And I kind of expect another one of those games here. Cam Ward has been playing about as well as you might want from a young rookie developing quarterback that is a huge gambler and playmaker sort of guy. I feel like Cam's doing his job. He made some plays last week. It just sort of happens to be that the team around him is not very close right now. They don't really have a dynamic runner right now. I mean, Tony Pollard's fine, but they don't have a dynamic guy. The offensive line has been quite disappointing, and the receiving core is still figuring it out, even though Elike Maynor looks like the real deal. On the defensive side of things, the Titans have actually been making some plays. They're playing solid on defense, and they're not, giving up 100 yards just freely every single play. And this is a Titans defense that can actually go a little bit. But on the flip side, the Colts are playing some incredible football. Daniel Jones is having a career start to his season. He's playing superb football. They got weapons. They got a great offensive line, a great running back, and a defense that can force turnovers and doesn't get beat over the top every single play. This is a really good Colts team that I think will be going very far this year, especially with what the division is looking like. For the Colts, just show up, handle your business. This Titans team will make it close and competitive, so handle your business. Don't make too many mistakes. Daniel Jones, continue to play the football that you've been doing the past 2 weeks, and I think the Colts will win. I think the final score will suggest a game that might not have been that close, kind of like what it was last week. But I think when you actually sit down and watch the game, I think the Titans will keep this one close. Ultimately, I do have the Colts winning here. I have the final score 30-17. Moving over to the Washington Commanders versus the Las Vegas Raiders. So we don't actually know who's going to be the quarterback for the Washington Commanders. I'm recording this Thursday morning, and as of right now, it still has not been reported whether or not Jaden Daniels will play. Because it is a knee injury, I kind of believe they're going to rest him. So I'm going to work with that assumption for this video. With that said, though, I do want to throw the caveat that my decision for who might win this game might change whether or not Jaden can go. Regardless of all that, though, I do think this Commanders defense will be able to hold up. I know they haven't been playing particularly great, especially last week versus Green Bay, but right now the Raiders they're in kind of a weird spot. They have dudes who can go, but they have a glaring flaw with their offensive line. Like Ashton Genty's a great running back who was drafted top 10 for a reason, but they just don't have the dudes up front who can make a hole for him. They have guys like Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers. I like Jack Besh a lot. Michael Mayer's gotten going too. I know Geno played horrendous last week, but I think Geno's a fine quarterback. Defensively, they've been better than advertised. I thought the Raiders were going to be a bottom 5 defense, and they've been actually not too bad. So against the Commanders, who will likely be starting Marcus Mariota, I actually do think the Raiders have the advantage here. Now, if Daniels does play and if he's his usual self, then I kind of believe the Commanders will have a bounce back game from last week and play a lot better. But if Jaden can't go, I still think Mariota is a good quarterback who can totally win the game, but I lean Las Vegas in a win here if the Commanders do not have Jaden Daniels. The big key moving forward for this Raiders team, if they want to have any success this year, I'm talking making the playoffs or getting 500 or, somewhere along those lines, they got to get this offensive line and Ashton Jeanty going. Yes, I know there's some injuries on the line right now. Maybe they'll come back for this one, maybe not. They got to get Ashton Jeanty going because right now, Jeanty's just not having any lanes to run with. When he gets a bit of space, he's making some plays. It's just that it's very few and far between. He's averaging like less than 4 yards a carry, and he's not playing good football because of the offensive line really struggling. So for this Raiders team, if they want to win this game, you got to get Jeanty going a little bit here. Gino, don't throw 3 interceptions. Don't turn the ball over. Play to your standard and defensively make some plays. So I'm going to pick the Raiders to win this one. But again, if Jaden does play, this might be subject to change though. But I'm going to assume Mariota gets the start. I'm going to pick the Raiders to win this one 23-20. Moving over to arguably the best game of the week, we have the LA Rams versus the Philadelphia Eagles. This is an awesome matchup. The fact this is played at 12 o'clock and not Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football or Thursday Night Football is insane to me. The fact that we have to watch Buffalo and Miami on Thursday, and then on Sunday Night Football, it's Kansas City and New York, although Monday Night Football is pretty good. The fact we have to watch those 2 games and not Eagles LA ticks me off. Regardless though, this is an awesome matchup. Both of these teams haven't played incredible football, but I think it's fair to say that the Rams have maybe played a bit more clean football. Obviously, the big win last week for the Eagles beating the Kansas City Chiefs is an awesome win. I know that Kansas City's not really playing like Kansas City right now, but to still have on your resume through 2 weeks a victory over Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid is an impressive one regardless of who's playing and who's not. I thought for the most part the Eagles dominated that game, especially defensively. I do worry about this offense though. Their inability to throw the ball down the field is a massive concern, but they can run the football. They can cheat on the tush push all they want because nobody can officiate it. It's such a tough play to officiate. League, get rid of it. I'm saying that as a Cowboys fan, so of course I'll say that. But look, I think this Eagles team is good. They need to find a way to unlock this vertical passing attack. Everything right now in the passing game is underneath. It's within about 10 or 15 yards. Can they get something going 15 to 20 yards downfield or over 25 yards down the field? A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are 2 incredible receivers. We've seen it in the past. Hopefully they can start to unlock this maybe this week. I know LA has a great defense with a great defensive line, but that secondary, there are some suspects there that you can maybe get away with. So I'm hoping to see A.J. Brown have a big week. In terms of the Rams offense, look, I think this Rams offense is very good. And unfortunately for the Philadelphia Eagles, they're going to have a tough task with this one because they have one great corner in Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, who's a flexible piece, but their second outside corner can be exploited. And when you have Devontae Adams on one side and Puka Nacua on the other side, that's a very difficult matchup. You pair that with an offensive line that's playing some good football. Matthew Stafford's playing really well right now. And of course, Kyron Williams and Sean McVay. I think this Rams offense will find success in this game. But kind of like what happened in the playoffs, can this Rams defense slow down Saquon Barkley? That's going to be their big test. I'm not sure they slow him down, but if they can slow down the passing attack and limit Saquon to just under 100 yards, maybe he gets a touchdown, but keep him below 100, limit the explosive plays, I think this Rams team can win this game because I don't know if the Eagles defense will be able to fully stop this Rams offense. I don't think that's the case. I think they're playing good football. They have weapons. They're well coached. They have a running game, a good offensive line, and defensively, they can get after the quarterback a little bit. They got a physical and strong and athletic defensive line. And I think their secondary is good enough to hold up in the passing game. And I just don't know if Jalen Hurts can throw the football past 15 yards right now, at least consistently, just because I haven't seen it so far this year. So I'm going to pick the LA Rams to win this game here in maybe a little bit of an upset. I have the Rams winning a close and competitive game. Give me 26-23. Maybe they win on a game-winning field goal. That'd be fun. Next up, I have the Atlanta Falcons versus the Carolina Panthers. This is a good old-fashioned trap game for the Atlanta Falcons. The Carolina Panthers caught a little bit of a groove there in the second half in their last week's game. They did lose that game, but Bryce Young started to play a little bit better. Whereas for the Falcons, their defense played lights out versus the Minnesota Vikings, but their offense was okay, especially Michael Penix. Penix didn't do anything horrendously bad. He was just more of a game manager last week. The good news for this Falcons team, this Panthers defense is not very good. I expect Michael Penix to have a nice bounce back game after not a bad week, but just kind of an average week in general. I think Bijan has a good game. If Drake London's going, I think Drake London, maybe Kyle Pitts have a nice game too. This offensive line should have an easy one here. I know Derek Brown's a good player, but they don't really have a true threat on the outside. DJ Wanham, I suppose, might be it, but yeah, Princely Amani Mullins made some plays, so this Panthers defense is fine. And let's not forget, this Panthers team was pretty competitive with the Falcons late into last year, so I think this Panthers team can keep this one close. Ultimately, though, if the Falcons handle their business, they should win this game. Again, that's the kind of the quote here, though. Can they handle their business? For Bryce and the Panthers, I just want to see continuous growth. I know last week we saw it late in the second half, but it took a little bit. I want to see 4 quarters of clean play from Bryce Young. Get the ball out early, run the football effectively. Let's see this offensive line start to play better. I know last week the Falcons defensive line went nuts, but they were also going up against a banged up offensive line in Minnesota. So let's see if the Panthers can hold up here. I'm going to predict the Falcons to win, but keep an eye on the Carolina Panthers. I think they could make this game quite close and maybe pull off the upset here. I'm not going to predict that. I'm going to predict the Atlanta Falcons to win this one. Give me a bit of a high-scoring affair here, especially later in the game. Give me 34-27. Moving over to the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the New England Patriots. This is a very interesting matchup, and I know this is going to be a game that sort of gets thrown in the weeds here that not a lot of people will pay attention to unless you're a fan of these two teams, but this is a really interesting matchup that I think will tell us quite a bit about both these teams. Let's start with this. These are two teams on 2 different timelines. The Steelers are a team that are quite old. They're quite experienced. They're trying to contend now. Whereas this Patriots team, yes, they have some older players like Stephon Diggs, Carlton Davis, so on and so forth, but they're also trying to build for the future, and they're trying to just get better week in and week out. I thought the Patriots took a big step forward last week, granted, not against a great defense. And for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I thought they regressed last week, especially on the offensive end, and the defense has been quite disappointing so far. This is a massive game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you want to be a serious threat in the AFC, and if you start the season off 1-2, makes your life quite difficult. For the Patriots, if you can start your year off 2-1 with a big win versus Pittsburgh, I think that tells you quite a bit about the team you're currently building. These are 2 excellent head coaches. These are 2 excellent teams that have had years of greatness and experience. These are just 2 legendary franchises. This will be a fun game. Ultimately, for me personally, this game does come down to experience. I said this in week 1, and it kind of came true. And I think it will ultimately play out on this one. When the Patriots went up against the Raiders, I said the Raiders had experience at head coach and quarterback. And there's more continuity there because Geno and Pete Carroll played together for a while. Same thing kind of applies here. Mike Tomlin, Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, a lot of experience. Whereas on the Patriots side of things, new quarterback, or I guess second-year quarterback in Drake May, a lot of youth around him, a weak offensive line, and a head coach that's still trying to figure things out with this roster. I just believe when it comes down to it, on 3rd down and 4th down execution or red zone execution, I think you will see it better on the Pittsburgh end, more so than on the Patriots end. I also believe this is a great opportunity for the Steelers defense to get back on track. They have not played well so far this year against this Patriots offense that is fine, but not special. I think the Steelers defense can really get going here. I'm going to predict Pittsburgh to win. I think it'll be a low scoring affair, but I think it should be a competitive game throughout. Give me 20-14 Pittsburgh. Next up, the Green Bay Packers versus the Cleveland Browns. I won't spend too much time on this one because the outcome of this game should be quite easy. I think the Green Bay Packers will win this game. They're just the better team playing a much higher brand of football. Cleveland has actually been able to outgain their opponents, but they've also lost to a 17 points from Joe Burrow, who had like 100 yards, and Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, who did not play clean football and actually were outgained by Cleveland. They still lost the game like 41 to I think 17 or something like that. This week versus the Packers just sort of have to show up and play 50% of what they usually can, and they'll probably win over 15 or 20 points. So again, not a lot to talk about here for the Packers. Get the win. This is called a stats game. This is where you build your stats. For Cleveland, let's see Quinshot Judkins more. Let's see Harold Fannin. I wouldn't mind seeing Dylan Gabriel get some snaps. Like, let's see some young guys play here. This is not going to be a close game. Give me Green Bay. Let's go 41. Let's go Cleveland. Let's go 20. Moving over to the New York Jets versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the New York Jets will be without Justin Fields, and that's going to make Tyrod Taylor the starting quarterback. And based off of week 2, that actually might be a bit of an upgrade for the New York Jets. Justin Fields went from incredible to terrible really, really quickly. And against this Buccaneers team, I actually think Tyrod Taylor's the better option. Now, let's get this out the way. The Jets will not be able to run the football. This Buccaneers defensive line stuffs the run better than anybody else in the entire NFL. Vita Vea is a total freak of nature. I have a hard time seeing this Jets team really get the run game going, which means they're going to be relying on the pass, and I think Tyrod's a better thrower of the football than Justin Fields, so I think he could find some success with Garrett Wilson this week. But defensively speaking, I don't see how the opposite corner of Sauce Gardner will slow down Emeka Egbuka or Mike Evans. I also think Bucky Irving gets going. I think this is a Buccaneers team that's going to find their groove this week. I think they're going to win this game. It's kind of similar to the Green Bay Packers game where one team is just better and they're clearly in a different direction. They're just playing a different brand of football. The Jets, I think, will play more like their week 1 self, not to that same level, but they'll play better than what they did in week 2. I just think this Buccaneers offense will get going and score a lot of points. And this Jets offense, I think they'll score points, but I don't think they'll score as much as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So give me the Buccaneers to win here. I have the final score 37-19. Moving over to an AFC West matchup versus the Denver Broncos and the LA Chargers. So far this year, I thought the Broncos were going to be better, but so far I have been wrong. The Chargers have looked like the much better team, and they actually look like a legitimate threat within the AFC. They handled business versus Kansas City in Brazil, and then versus the Raiders, they handled their business and made Geno look pedestrian as hell. So far this year, this Broncos offense has not really been clicking. They haven't played horrendous football, but they turned the ball over 4 times versus Tennessee, so they're not playing very clean football. Defensively, they were quite disappointing last week versus the Indianapolis Colts. They gave up a lot of yards to Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones looked really good. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. I do think this Broncos team is very good. I think they will be competing for the AFC West late into the season. Maybe not for the division, but for standings or something along those lines. So this one will be close, but man, this Chargers team is just playing good football right now. They're playing excellent on the defensive end. They're playing excellent on the offensive end. I do worry a little bit about this offensive line versus that defensive line. I think the LA Chargers could struggle a little bit. Not Joe Alt, because Joe Alt's a stud, but the other guys against all the pass rushers that the Denver Broncos can present. This would be a close game. In divisional matchups are always close, but I'm going to lean on the offense that's just playing better football right now, and that would be the LA Chargers. Denver hasn't figured out their running game yet. They haven't figured out Bo Nix quite yet. They're not playing clean football. Like, I just think I have to pick this Denver Broncos team to lose this game, even though I think it will be close. Give me the Chargers here to pull off a massive win to start 2-0 within the division, or start 3-0 within the division. Give me the LA Chargers to win this one. I have the final score 26-20. Moving over to the New Orleans Saints versus the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks should win this game, but will they win this game? This actually is our second game of our 3 o'clock ones. I forgot to mention the Broncos was another 3 o'clock game, so we're now entering into the 3 o'clock window here. The Saints should not win this game, but they might just do it. Look, this Saints team, they have something to them that makes me kind of want to pick them here. Spencer Rattler, like, look, he's playing good football. He's not playing great football or superb football or Pro Bowl, all pro level football, but he's playing quality football. He's not turning the football over. He's not making bad plays. He's getting the ball out quick. He's helping his offensive line. He's running when he needs to. I think Rattler's doing a fine job. Now, on the flip side, Seattle defensively is playing great football. Offensively, it took them a while to get going. Week 1, they were not very good outside of JSN. Week 2, if you take away the turnovers, they played much better versus a Steelers defense that I think should be good. This week versus the Saints, I think the Seahawks will win this game, but don't count out the Saints. This is the one game that I'm really hesitant to pick against New Orleans. I think New Orleans could be a serious upset candidate here, so keep an eye on the Saints. But here's the thing, I do think Seattle will win this game. Defensively, they're playing really good, clean football, and offensively speaking, if you can get JSN the football, let's get Cooper Kupp the football, and can you run the football effectively, which I think they should be able to do so. This is a Saints defensive line that I don't think will put a ton of pressure on the Seahawks offensive line, which means the Seahawks offense can find rhythm. They can get into a bit of a groove. And because of that, I do think this offense will move the football. So keep an eye on the Saints, but I will pick the Seahawks to win this game. I have the final score, Seattle 28, New Orleans 21. I think New Orleans might get a chance to win it late like they have the past 2 weeks, but I think they'll fall short just by a little bit. Moving over to the Dallas Cowboys versus the Chicago Bears. You want to talk about two defenses that have not played good football. This is your game here. The Cowboys defense showed a little bit of life in week 1 after the first half, or I guess the weather delay. But in week 2, they regressed seriously. Now, in fairness to Dallas, they are missing Deron Bland, DeMarvin Overshown, Savon Ravel, and a handful of other guys. So they're missing some pieces here. So they might get better in weeks from now, but they're not going to be better this week. Look, this Bears defense is kind of in the same boat. This is a bad defense for Chicago. They've just not played clean football, but neither have the Dallas Cowboys. So for me, this comes down to which offense do I trust more? A Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson-led offense, or Dak Prescott and Brian Schottenheimer offense? I think the answer is pretty clear. Dak Prescott's playing at a very high level. Schottenheimer has actually looked quite good as a head coach so far, and this offense looks pretty functional. They got CD, they got Pickens, they got Ferg. Javonte Williams has actually looked good. Offensive line, while not PFF grading, is great. Like if you look at Guyton scores, they're not good. I think the play on the field is not actually that bad. They're running the football. They're creating holes. Dak is moving up in the pocket. He's making plays. Feel like he's not being sacked or pressured too often. And this Bears defense, they just don't have the guys right now. They're down a corner. Their defensive line is just okay. I mean, I think this Cowboys offense will be able to score pretty often here. Whereas for Caleb, I think Caleb could have a nice week this week. I mean, this is a Cowboys defense that made Russell Wilson look like his former MVP self. Maybe there's a bit of motivation for Dallas to play better defensively, but I just don't know if they have the guys right now. But I think Dallas will win because of this offense. I'm expecting a super high scoring affair here. I'm talking maybe a combined 60 points. That would not shock me. But I think Dallas will ultimately pull off the win. This is in Chicago, but those Bears fans, they're not loyal for long. I mean, if this Bears team gets down 15 or 10 plus points, they're going to start booing them. So we'll keep an eye out on that one. But give me the Dallas Cowboys to win this game here. I'm thinking final score like 41-30. I'm going to go 41-30 Dallas. Moving over to the Arizona Cardinals versus the San Francisco 49ers. So it has not been confirmed whether or not Brock Purdy will go. The last report that I can tell you guys is that they say that he has a chance to play. I'm going to predict this game with the mindset that Purdy does play, but I don't think it really matters whether he does or not. I do think the outcome of this game might already be a little predetermined. This is a Niners team that has some pieces, but they're banged up all over the place. And if you don't have a 100% Brock Purdy who's fully going, feeling comfortable with that shoulder, then I have some concern for this team. No George Kittle. McCaffrey's playing at a fairly high level. They're using him a lot, so he's playing good enough. This offensive line is just okay. This defense making some plays. They looked good in week 1 for sure. But I think against the Cardinals, this is a game where Arizona needs to get going. Arizona played 2 subpar games in week 1 and 2. Their defense has looked good, not so much on the offensive end. I want to see this team pick it up this week, and I think they will. I think Kyler and Marv really get a connection going with this one. I know there's not much to back this up, but I do believe they will make Marvin Harrison Jr. a focal point of the offense this week. I think they'll pass the football effectively with Trey McBride. I think they should be able to run the football nicely too with James Conner. The offensive line for Arizona is not spectacular, but I think they're good enough versus a Niners defensive line that, you take away Nick Bosa, is quite young and developmental. So I think Arizona should have the upper hand here. I also think just, if I'm the Niners, I'm probably sitting Brock Purdy for 1 more week because their schedule is not that difficult. And if I lose this game, it is what it is. But Mac Jones looked good in week 2. I think he can look fine in this one too. So if I'm the Niners, I'm not letting Brock Purdy play. We're off to a good start this year. We're 2-0. We could win this one with or without you. So I would start Mac Jones this week and then reevaluate him next week. I am going to pick Arizona to win here, but it wouldn't be surprised if San Francisco won this one. This is sort of a close to coin toss game, but I will lean Arizona here. I have the final score 27-23. Next up, our Sunday night football game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the New York Giants. Again, NFL, I don't know why this is Sunday Night Football. Maybe you know something that I don't. This should probably be a noon game, though. Regardless of that, though, this is a game that I actually think low-key could be pretty fire. This Giants team showed some life offensively last week. Granted, against the Dallas Cowboys, but they showed some life. Russell Wilson really was accurate all day long, minus the dumb turnover in overtime. But him and Neighbors seem to have a bit of a connection growing there. You know, Cam Scadaboo's taken over that RB1 role. Not efficient or great last week, but I think he can definitely start to get better. And look, this Chiefs team, they're figuring it out on both sides right now. On the offensive end, they have no firepower. They cannot run the football much. They don't have any receivers. Mahomes is literally having to backpack this team right now. And against a Giants defense that I think has some dogs, I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those low-scoring affairs. And for the Giants side of things, look, this Chiefs defense is very good, but I think that if this Chiefs team cannot score more than 24 points, this Giants team might be able to be a more functional offense. I actually think the Giants have a chance of winning this game here. I'm not going to predict it because I'm a little scaredy cat. I do think Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes make enough plays here, but man, I would not count out the New York Giants in this one. I think 100% this Giants defense can slow down Mahomes in that offense because they just don't have firepower on their end, especially when Kelsey's as old as he is. They have no Rice, no Worthy, a young offensive line that's still growing, and no running back that's worth the damn. Outside of Patrick Mahomes, who's carrying this team, they really don't have a lot going for them. Thornton's played okay lately. He had a big touchdown last week. I think Kansas City defensively can go, but I don't know if their offense can. Whereas for New York, I just don't know if I can fully buy into the idea of Russell Wilson and Malik Neighbors outplaying Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. It's a bit hard or far-fetched, and it's a Sunday night game. You know the refs, you know they might skew it a little bit. I'm going to go the Chiefs to win here. I think it's a low-scoring game. I'll say 24-21, but don't be surprised if it's flipped. I think this game is a lot closer than what people might say it is, although I could be wrong. Maybe the Giants get smoked. And last up, the Detroit Lions versus the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the last time we saw this game, the Lions got their ass kicked. But this is a new season with some new players, and the Detroit Lions just put belt to ass versus the Chicago Bears. They put up 52 points and over 500 yards, whereas the Ravens are coming off sort of a weird start to their season. A really fun Week 1 game versus Buffalo, where for all intents and purposes, the Ravens probably should have won that game. They had some things not go their way, including a Derrick Henry fumble. They lose the game. Then in Week 2, yes, the score was, what, 41-17 Cleveland or Baltimore, but when you actually sat down and watched the game, this game was actually, it wasn't a blowout. It took the Ravens 4 quarters to start to really put the score up on them. It was never in doubt, don't get that wrong, but it wasn't like they smoked them out of the water there. I mean, I actually think Cleveland outgained the Baltimore Ravens. So the Ravens are 1-1, but you also have to look at the Detroit Lions, who got blown out the waters in Week 1 and then blew out the waters of Chicago in Week 2. So sort of two polar opposites for, honestly, both these teams. I think Baltimore has the advantage here. I still believe Baltimore has one of, if not the best overall rosters in the NFL. I think there's a level to this defense that can get better. And offensively speaking, if they can get Derrick Henry going, which I think they will be able to, then I believe the Ravens should have the upper hand here. I just don't know if I can trust this Lions offense versus this Ravens defense. I don't think it's going to be a blowout either way. I'm expecting a pretty fun, competitive game here, which honestly, this is a big game for both these teams. Both these teams, they failed their Week 1 test. Let's see if they can bounce back in Week 3. Huge game for both these teams. I will pick Baltimore just because I've seen this matchup before. I know Detroit has really struggled with athletic, mobile quarterbacks. Look at Jaden Daniels last year. Look at Lamar Jackson. We'll see if Detroit has a game plan to stop them, but I'm going to pick the Baltimore Ravens here. I think we get a high-scoring affair. I'm going to say 34-28 Baltimore. So these are my picks for Week 3 of the NFL season. Let me know in the comment section below, what do you agree with and what do you disagree with? And if you enjoyed, hit the like and subscribe button. Love you guys.